Hi guys, morning. Can you all hear me? Hi guys, can you all hear me?
Hi ma'am, good morning. Yes,
Hi. Okay, so can you guys see the slides?
yes ma'am.
Okay, all right. All right, guys. So then we can start off with the lecture now. Okay, so yeah, so this is not this is the last week's lecture note, but we couldn't finish it off. Like there are like 7 or 8 slides that we couldn't discuss last week. So I will start off from those slides. Okay, so let's finish that remaining part in this note, and then we can move on to today's lecture note. Okay, so we stopped in slide 17, right? We discussed this characteristics of budgeting is the topic that we is the last topic that we discussed in the previous week. So we discussed this slide. So yeah, so I need to start from here onwards. Okay, so guys, basically you guys learned about budgeting in your previous week's lecture, right? You learned about budgeting. You learned what is a budget and what is the process of budgeting, and the what else? And like the importance of budgeting, the purpose of budgeting, all of that, and characteristics of budgeting. Okay, so these are the things that you guys learned last week. So today we can start off from here. Okay, so first of all, we'll discuss the importance of budgeting. Okay, so why budgeting is important. Okay, so budgeting is important due to these reasons. Okay, due to these three main reasons, budgeting is important. Okay, so budgeting is important because budgeting is necessary for you to plan your future. Okay, so like to plan the future of your company, to plan the future of your business, you need budgeting. Okay, because budgeting gives you an overview of your expenses and also gives an overview of your income, right? So when you know these are my sources of income and these are my expenses, it is easy for you to plan the future of your business or to plan the future of your company. Okay, so budgeting is important due to this reason. Okay, it budgeting allows you to plan your future, and it also allows you to take control over your activities. Okay, so for example, if you think like once you make the budget, if you can see that your income is lesser than your expenses, so that means you spend more money but you gain little money, right? When your income is lesser than your expenses, that means you are spending more but earning less. Okay, so these kind of situations can be seen through budgets, right? When you prepare a budget, you can see these kind of situations clearly. Okay, once you analyze your incomes and once you analyze your expenses, you can see whether your income is lesser than your expenses or more than your expenses. Okay, so like if your income is more than your expenses, that is good. Okay, that is a profit. That is good. But if the opposite happens, if your income is lesser than your expenses, then you need to strictly control your expenses, right? Then you have to take control over your expenses and you need to manage your expenses strictly. Okay, so these are some so this is why budgeting is important for a company. Okay, so budgeting allows you to plan your future and it also allows you to take control of your activities. Okay, so for example, you can take control of your expenses, like I just mentioned. Okay, and budgeting, so that is one thing. And the other reason why budgeting is important is because it facilitates coordination uh, between different departments and different sectors. Okay, because budgeting is not something that happens just in the HR department or just in the manufacturing department or just in the QA department. Okay, so budgeting is a process which happens in each and every department of the company. Okay, so production department also makes a budget, and um, the QA department also makes a budget, and the supplies department will also make a budget, and the HR will also make a budget. Okay, so likewise, budgeting is a process which happens in each and every department. Okay, so yeah, so these budgets are actually called departmental budgets. Okay, so the budgets that are prepared by each and every department are called departmental budgets. Okay, so the budget, the HR will make their the HR department will make their budget, and the production department will make their budget, and the QA department will make their budget, um, and the research and development, the R&D department will make their budget. Okay, so likewise, all the departments will make their own budgets. Okay, because why do we need a different budget for different departments? Because the sources of income and the expenses, especially the expenses, are different from one department to another department, right? Okay, so if you take, I mean, for example, if we take telephone bills, the telephone bills in HR department, like the telephone expenses in the HR department is usually kind of higher compared to other departments, because HR department is about coordinating with people, right? So they call people for interviews, and they call their employees as well. Okay, so they call people for different reasons. So that if we take telephone expenses, the phone bills, the telephone expenses are kind of higher in the HR department compared to other departments. Okay, and likewise, so the expenses vary from one department to another department. So that is why we that is why we need different budgets from different departments. Like that's why we require a budget from each and every department. Okay, so HR will make their own budget, the QA will make their own budget, the production department will make their own budget, the R&D department will make their own budget. So likewise, different departments will make their own budgets. Okay, so these budgets which are made by different departments are called departmental budgets. Okay, so once you make your departmental budgets, you collect all these departmental budgets together and combine them into a one common budget. And this one common budget is called master budget. It's called a master budget. Okay, so yeah, so that is the difference between departmental budget and master budget. Okay, so departmental budget means the budgets which are made by each and every department. Okay, so once you make your departmental budgets, you collect all those departmental budgets and make one budget, one common budget, by combining all those departmental budgets. Okay, so that one common budget is called, that one main budget is called the master budget. Okay, so this is another importance of budgeting. It allows you to coordinate with different departments. The different departments learn how to come together, uh, work as a team to make the budget. Okay, so it allows coordination between various departments. That is another importance of budgeting. Okay, and the other point is budgeting allows you to make your own decisions when necessary. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if your expenses are more, then you need to make decisions to control your expenses, right? So likewise, budgeting allows you to make decisions when it is necessary. Okay, so this is why budgeting is important for a company. Okay, Okay, so now since we discussed about the importance, we can move on to the principles of budget management. Okay, so principles of budget management means the principles that you need to follow in budget management. So when you are managing your budget, what are the principles that you need to keep in mind? Okay, so these are the principles of budget management. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so yeah, so the first thing is your budget. So whatever the budget that you prepare should focus on the requirements of your organization. Okay, so your organization or your company has its own requirements, its own needs or requirements, right? So this budget should be made focused on those requirements of the organization. Okay, so when we make a budget, we need to make sure that we make the budget by focusing on the requirements of the organization. Okay, so we do not need to focus on other things which are not requirements of the organization. Okay, so if there are any other things which are not considered as requirements of the organization, we don't need to take those things into consideration when we prepare the budget. Okay, we need to focus on the requirements of the organization when we are preparing the budget. Okay, and we also need to consider the objectives and policies of the organization. Okay, so organization has organizational objectives or organizational goals. Okay, and the organization, each and every organization has its own set of policies or rules. Okay, so these objectives and policies should also be considered when we make a budget. Okay, and also the other principle is that when you make the budget, you need to make use of your financial resources and non-financial resources. Okay, so financial resources means monetary resources like the finances, things that you have to do with money. Okay, so you need to you need to consider your financial resources, and also, so some people think that when you are making a budget, you need to consider only your financial resources. Okay, so that is not true. You need to consider non-financial resources as well. Okay, so non-financial resources means resources which are not about money. For example, human resources. So human resources means human beings, right? So that is an example for non-financial resource. Okay, so likewise, when we make a budget, we need to use both our financial resources and non-financial resources effectively. Okay, so both these types of resources should be used effectively when making a budget. Okay, so that is another principle of budget management. Okay, and if you have any certain activities, you need to plan these activities in advance. Okay, so you have to plan ahead. And if you have any activities or any events or any activities happening in the organization, okay, so these activities, for example, uh, if we take an event happening in the company, so this event will also cost you a certain amount of money, right? So you need to plan these events or activities ahead, like without waiting until the last minute, without waiting until you make the budget. You need to plan these events or activities ahead. You need to plan these things in advance and estimate the cost that you will be spending for these events and activities, so that you can allocate this cost. You can use this cost to prepare your budget. Like when you prepare your budget, you can include this as a cost as well. Whatever the money, whatever the amounts of money that you spend for activities or events in the company, you can mention them also in the budget if you plan these activities or events in advance. Okay, so that is another principle, planning things ahead. And um, and the next thing is budgeting requires consistent delegation for framing an executive budget. Okay, so consistent delegation Okay, so delegation means uh, the division of work, how the workload is divided among different people. Okay, so like I told you guys before, we just discussed about the departmental budget and master budgets, right? So I told you that each and every department will come up with their own budget, and then we combine them into a one budget called master budget, right? So yeah, so this proves you that you need delegation among different departments to make the budget, right? So budgeting requires constant delegation, right? So budgeting requires teamwork. Like budgeting needs contribution from each and every person working in the company. Okay, so budgeting, making a budget is not something that can be done by only one person. Okay, so it requires the cooperation or the contribution from each and every single person working in the company. Okay, so budgeting requires constant delegation, constant contribution. Okay, and the other point is should include coordinating efforts of various departments. Okay, so this is what I just mentioned. Okay, so this is another main principle of budget management. There should be uh, coordination among different departments. Okay, because as I just mentioned, once we finish making the departmental budgets, we are going to combine all of them into a master budget, right? So in this combining process, like all the departments should coordinate with each other to combine these departmental budgets into a one whole budget, right? So this combining all these different budgets into a one um, whole budget into a one common budget is not an easy task, right? It requires a lot of knowledge, it requires a lot of time. Okay, so that's why. So this uh, like combining all the departmental budgets into a final master budget requires coordination of all the various departments. Okay, so there should be proper coordination between all the departments. That is another main principle of budget management. Okay, and the next thing is there should be an adequate amount of checks. Okay, so that means once we make a budget, this budget should be adequately checked. This budget should be checked enough to see if the budget is too high or too low. Okay, so there can be too high estimates. There can be in your budget, there can be too high estimates or too low estimates. Okay, so you might estimate things too high or you might estimate things too low in your budget. Okay, so if your estimates are too high, that's not good. And if your estimates are too low, that is also not good. Okay, so you should have proper, like really good estimation skills to make sure that you do not go for too high estimates or too low estimates. Okay, so estimates should be somewhere in between, in a middle ground. Shouldn't be too high or shouldn't be too low. Okay, so the budget, once we make a budget, this budget should be adequately checked. This budget should be constantly checked to see whether if there are any too high estimates or any too low estimates. Okay, and if there are any too high estimates or too low estimates, these estimates should be corrected. Okay, so that is another main principle of budget management. Okay, and here you can see some more principles of budget management. Okay, so the budget that you prepare should be appropriate to the nature of your business. Okay, so when we make a budget, we need to consider the nature of the business and we need to make our budget according to the nature of the company or according to the nature of the business. Okay, and the budget should always be prepared under direction and supervision. Okay, so there should be a supervisor, or there should be a manager, or there should be someone to direct you or to supervise you while you are preparing the budget. Okay, so the budget should be done under uh, direction or supervision of an administrator or a financial officer. Okay, so there should always be someone to direct you and supervise you when you are making the budget. Okay, and yeah, and whatever the budget that you prepare should be interpreted throughout the organization. Okay, so for example, like I said just few minutes ago, once you make the departmental budgets, you will collect all the departmental budgets. You will collect all the budgets made by different departments and you will interpret them. Okay, so as a team, you will interpret each and every departmental budget, and then only you will make one common master budget after that. Okay, so interpretation is necessary. Interpretation is very important. Whatever the budgets made by different departments should be interpreted throughout the organization. Okay, so interpreted throughout the organization means the entire organization should come together as a team, and you need to interpret each and every budget as a team. Okay, so like each and every departmental budget should be interpreted as a team, and then only you combine all these budgets into a master budget. Okay, so interpretation is very important. Okay, so the budget should be interpreted not by one person, not by one department. You need to interpret them throughout the organization as a team. You need to get together as a team, to get together um, as a team and interpret these different budgets as a team. Okay, so then only you will be able to effectively combine all these budgets into a master budget. Okay, so if you interpret them individually, then the combining process will not be that effective. Okay, so to effectively combine everything into a master budget, you need to interpret all the departmental budgets throughout the organization. Okay, so the budget that HR the HR budget should be interpreted by the HR, by the QA, by the production, by R&D, all the departments. Okay, so that is the meaning of interpreted throughout the organization. Okay, so that means you need to interpret the budgets as a team, as an entire organization. Okay, and that is another principle. And the other thing is, when we make a budget, we need to review the performance of the previous year. Okay, so both quantitatively and qualitatively. Okay, so when we prepare a budget, we need to consider the company performance of the previous year, how the company performed in the previous year. That should be considered when you are making a budget this year. Okay, so the past performance is very important and it should be considered when making a budget. Okay, and as we discussed in our last week's lecture, your budget should be flexible. Okay, so your budget should be flexible. That means you should be able to adjust your budget accordingly. Okay, so I mean, for example, we discussed in the last week's lecture also, the prices of things always change, right? Sometimes the prices of things go down, and most of the time the prices go up. So likewise, according to these changes, you should be able to do edits, or you should be able to do slight changes to your budget. Okay, so to do this, your budget should be flexible. Okay, if it is not flexible, then you will not be able to do these changes to your budget. Okay, so when we make the budget, we need to make sure that the budget is flexible. Okay, so flexibility is another main principle of budget management. So yeah, so that's about the principles of budget management. Okay, so now we can look into the process of making a budget, budgeting process. Okay, so there are a few steps. Yeah, there are a few steps in budgeting. Okay, so there are around 6 main steps that you need to follow when making a budget. Okay, so let's see what are those steps. Okay, so this is the budgeting process, or else the steps that you need to follow when making a budget. Okay, so the step 1 is establishment of operational goals and objectives and policies. Okay, so in the first step, you need to establish your operational goals, your objectives, and your policies. Okay, so the organization, in each and every organization has their goals, objectives, and policies, has their own goals, objectives, and policies, right? So these goals, objectives, and policies should be established as the first step. Okay, so establishment of operational goals, objectives, and policies is the first step. The organization should establish their goals, objectives, and policies. This is the first step of budgeting. And step number 2. Okay, so once you establish your goals, objectives, and policies, the next thing that you need to do is you need to translate these goals and objectives uh, into quantifiable objectives. Quantifiable objectives means objectives that you can quantify. Okay, so once you establish your organizational goals and objectives, you need to translate, you need to convert these goals and objectives into numbers that you can quantify. Okay, so quantifiable objectives means the objectives that you can quantify. Okay, so once you, after establishing goals and objectives, we convert these goals and objectives into numbers. Okay, so that is what happens in step 2. The conversion of goals and objectives into numbers, into quantifiable objectives. Okay, and in step 2, departmental goals can also be made. Okay, so in step 1, you made organizational goals. Organizational goals means the goals that you have for the entire organization, right? So different departments have their own departmental goals as well. Okay, so departmental goals are different from one department to another department. Okay, so these departmental goals can be made in the step 2. Okay, so that is, these are the things that are happening in step 2. Okay, so step 3. So what happens in step 3? Okay, so we start preparing the budget in step 3. Okay, so budget එකක් prepare කරන වැඩේ පටන් ගන්නේ මේ step 3 එකෙන්. Okay, so formal plan for budget preparation and review, including assignment of responsibilities and timetable, is prepared. Okay, so we formally start our budget preparation in this step 3. Okay, so this is the step number 3. In step 3, you formally start your budget preparation process. Okay, so you formally start preparing the budget in step 3. Okay, so in this step 3, you need to consider, like, you need to have an idea of how you are going to share responsibilities among each other. Okay, so we just discussed that budgeting is not done by one person, right? Budgeting is done by different departments. Like, budgeting is done as a team. There are so many people involved in this budgeting process, right? So what is the part that each and every person needs to play? You should know that, right? So when you do a teamwork, you should know which part should be done by which person. Okay, so even when you do a group, I mean, for this diploma, you don't have any group work, but if you do a group work, if we have any teamwork, then after forming your groups, you should know this part will be done by this person, this part will be done by this person. Likewise, you should know how the responsibilities and tasks are shared among the group members, right? So the same theory applies here as well. Okay, so in step 3, you should share your responsibilities with each other. Okay, so I will give this thing to this person. This thing will be done by this person, and this thing will be handled by this person. Likewise, you need to share your responsibilities among the team members. Okay, and you can prepare a timetable as well. Okay, so you can prepare a timetable for your budgeting process. Okay, so you can once you assign the tasks to different people, once you share your responsibilities, a timetable can be prepared. Like you can give a deadline to each and every person to complete their tasks. Okay, so you give a certain deadline to person A to complete his or her task, and you give a certain deadline to person B to complete his or her task, and you give another deadline to person C to complete his or her task. Okay, and likewise, you can prepare a timetable. Okay, and if you're and so in the budgeting process, you will definitely have to hold meetings and like meet up with your team members and discuss things, right? So budgeting is kind of a complicated task. So discussions are very much needed, right? So there can be situations where you have to meet up with your team members and discuss certain things related to budgeting, right? So these the dates and times for these meetings can also be mentioned in this timetable. Okay, so when you prepare the timetable, all these deadlines that you gave to different people and the meetings that you are going to have, what are the dates for of those meetings and what are the times of those meetings and what are the venues of those meetings? Venue means the place where you meet. Okay, so it can be an auditorium, it can be a meeting room. Likewise, all these details can be mentioned in the timetable that you prepare. Okay, so you can do these things in the step 3. Okay, so you can assign responsibilities to your team members, different responsibilities to different team members, and then uh, prepare the timetable. Okay, and then you start working. Okay, so once you assign the responsibilities and once the timetable is prepared, then we start working. Okay, then we start the budgeting process in step 3. Okay, so each and every department will prepare their own departmental budget. Okay, so in step 4, departmental budgets are revised and master budget is prepared. Okay, so in step 3, all the departments will make their own budgets, right? So these are called departmental budgets. Okay, so in step 4, as a team, you will go through each and every departmental budget created by different departments. And if there are any errors, so if there are any mistakes, you can revise them, you can correct them. Okay, and even if there were no errors, so even if there were no mistakes, if you need to change certain things, you can discuss as a team and you can revise these departmental budgets. You can edit them. Okay, so once you revise the departmental budgets, you combine all these departmental budgets together and make one big budget called master budget. Okay, so you combine, you put all the departmental budgets together and make the master budget. Okay, so this is what happens in step 4. Okay, and in step 5, um, in step 5, you need to measure the financial feasibility of master budget. Okay, so financial feasibility means like how feasible the master budget is. Okay, so like we discussed earlier, if there are any too high estimates or if there are any too low estimates, then this budget is not that feasible, right? If you have too high estimates or too low estimates, it is not financially feasible, right? So you need to make it financially feasible. Once you make the master budget, you need to make the you need to make sure that this master budget is financially feasible. Okay, so like we discussed earlier, you can check if you have any too low estimates or too high estimates in your master budget, and if you have them in your master budget, we can correct them and make it financially feasible. Okay, and once you do these changes, the final document should be approved and distributed to all parties involved. Okay, so once you get the approval for your master budget, you need to distribute it to all the departments of the company. Okay, so it should be distributed to all parties involved. Okay, and that is what happens in step 5. Okay, so in step 6, yeah. So in step 6, every head of the office required to prepare budget estimate in respect of salaries of establishment, contingent expenditure and others. Example, telephone, office expenses, rent of building, etc. Okay, so this is like we discussed just few minutes ago. Like every head of the office or every head of the department uh, should prepare their own budgets. Okay, because like every department should prepare their own departmental budgets, because these expenses are different from one department to another department. Okay, so if you take telephone, for example, as I mentioned earlier, telephone expenses can be higher in the HR department compared to other departments, because HR is the department which contacts people, right? Which keeps calling people and which contacts people. So the bills, the telephone bills can be slightly, not slightly, can be considerably higher in the HR department compared to other departments. Okay, so each head of the department should, every head of the department should prepare a budget for their own department. Okay, so these are called departmental budgets. Okay, so this is the budgeting process in simple terms. Okay, so in these 2 slides, you guys learned how budgeting is done, the budgeting process. Okay, so now since we discussed about the budgeting process, we can move on to discuss about the advantages of budgeting. Okay, so these are the advantages of budgeting. Okay, so budgeting allows you to be accountable for your own actions, and it teaches you how to take responsibilities. Okay, and how to take responsibilities as individual people, and also how to take responsibilities as a company, as a team. Okay, and budgeting also encourages managers to um, make careful analysis of operation. Okay, so it allows managers to direct and supervise their employees throughout the process of budgeting. That is another advantage. Okay, and through budgeting, you can you can identify your weaknesses. Okay, so through budgeting, we can identify our weaknesses and we can correct those weaknesses. Okay, corrective measures can be taken to correct those mistakes or correct those weaknesses. Okay, and through budgeting, we can also handle our financial matters in an orderly manner. Right? එකනේ financial matters පිළිවෙලකට sort out කරගන්න පුළුවන් through budgeting. Okay, so budgeting allows us to handle our financial matters neatly in an orderly manner. Okay, and those are the advantages of budgeting. Okay, and here are the disadvantages of budgeting. Okay, so you guys might be thinking whether there are any disadvantages of budgeting. Yes, there are lots of advantages and there are few disadvantages as well. Okay, so let's see what are the disadvantages of budgeting. Okay, so in the budgeting process, when I just few seconds ago, when I was teaching you guys the budgeting process, I told you that in step 1, the organization needs to establish their goals and objectives. And in step 2, you convert all these goals and objectives into numbers. Right? So converting all the objectives and goals into numbers can be a disadvantage for the company. Okay, so අර කියන්නේ හැම goal එකක්ම හැම objective එකක්ම company එකේ වෙන හැම activity එකක්ම අර මේ numbers වලින් දකින්න එක can be a disadvantage. Okay, so එහෙම අර goals, objectives, policies හැම එකක්ම numbers වලින්ම financial terms වලින්ම දකින්න එක අවාසියක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් sometimes. Okay, so this is one disadvantage of budgeting. Right, so converting all the aspects of converting all aspects of the entire organization into numbers can be a disadvantage sometimes. Okay, and that is one thing. Okay, and the other disadvantage is that budgeting requires a lot of skills and experiences. Okay, so you will need to hire a lot of skilled and expert people for this budgeting process. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have a skilled and a well experienced staff to prepare budgets. Okay, because budgeting is a complex task, it's a kind of a complicated task. So whoever the people who make the budget should be very skilled and very knowledgeable and very well experienced. Okay, so that means as a company you need to hire skilled and experienced people for the budgeting process, right? So this can be an disadvantage because, like, when you hire skilled and experienced people, you need to like you need to provide them good salaries, right? Because එකනේ පොඩි salaries වලට skilled and experienced කට්ටිය එන්නේ නැහැනේ පොඩි salaries පොඩි ප්‍රමාණික salary එකකට වැඩ කරන්න. I mean, skilled and experienced people will not be happy to work for a less amount of salary, right? Taken podi salary ekakata for a small salary. Skilled and experienced people will not join your company to work for a small salary because they are skilled and they are experienced. So they demand more for their salary, right? So salary is an expense from the organization, right? Because the organization is the one who needs to pay the salary. So it is an expense from the organization side. Okay, so when you hire more skilled people, more experienced people, you need to provide good salaries to them. Okay, so you will need to spend some good amount of money to these skilled and experienced people. Okay, so that can be a disadvantage for the company because when you pay salaries, the company is losing money from their side, right? Especially when the salaries are good, when you pay good salaries, you are losing a considerable amount of money from the company side. Okay, so this can be a disadvantage for the company. Okay, hiring skilled and experienced people because you need to give them a considerable amount of salary. You need to give them a considerable salary. You can't provide them just a small salary because they will not come and work uh, for for a small salary if they are skilled and well experienced. Okay, and the other disadvantage is that budgeting is time consuming and expensive. Okay, so budgeting is time consuming. It consumes a lot of time. Okay, so you guys learned about the budgeting process over here. So you guys can see the number of things that you need to do in this process, right? So there are so many things that you need to do. Okay, you need to set your goals and then you need to convert them into numbers, and then you need to share responsibilities, and then you need to prepare timetables, and then you need to prepare departmental budgets, and then you need to combine them into a master budget, and then you need to check this master budget, and if there are any errors, you need to correct those errors, and then you need to get the document approved. Okay, so likewise, you can see there are so many things involved in the budgeting process. Like there are so much to do in budgeting when preparing a budget, right? So this can be time consuming. So budgeting is not something that you can do within just few days or within just few weeks. It takes time. Okay, so it consumes a lot of time. That is another disadvantage of budgeting. Okay, so guys, we are done with this lecture note. So do you all have any questions from this lecture note, or is everything clear to you guys?
Clear, Miss.
All right, can I hear from the others as well?
Clear, ma'am.
All right. Okay, guys. So
Clear, ma'am.
then, all right. Okay, cool. Okay, so then we can move on to today's lecture note. Okay, since we are done with this, we can move on to lecture note 9. So let me share my slides for that.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes,
I want to add something for budgeting.
someone was
Uh,
about to
I'm
ask
Janaka.
something. Yeah, yes,
Ma'am,
Janaka.
uh, if we at when we budgeting, ma'am mentioned already mentioned we should reduce our expenses. Uh, if we after compare uh, after comparing, then
Yeah.
we should uh, we share and control them our expenses, and we should increase our revenue.
Yes, exactly, Janaka. Yes,
Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yep.
yeah,
You need to control, just controlling your expenses will not be, expenses control karanaka vitarakna will not be useful sometimes. Like you said, you need to like boost your income or your revenue as well. Okay, so there should be a proper balance of both, like cutting down
yeah.
expenses and increase your
And
income.
we should find new resources.
Yes,
We should,
because expenses cut down කරනවා කියන එක ඒ කියන්නේ ඔක්කොම expense සමහරලාට ගොඩාක්ම cut down කරන්නත් බෑනේ, like there is a
yeah,
certain extent to which you can cut down your expenses, right? තියෙන expenses සේරම we can't cut them down, no? So there's a
yeah.
certain extent to which we can cut them down. So that's why increasing the income is also like important, because expenses are limitlessly cut down කරන්න බෑ. There is a certain extent. So එතකොට like survive වෙන්න නම් for the organization income එක boost කරගන්නත් ඕනේ at the same time.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
No worries, Janaka. Thank you for adding that point. Guys, can you all see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, so then we can start off with this lesson. Okay, so in this lesson, you are going to learn about the sources of funds. Okay, so this is the main topic that we are going to learn today. Sources of funds. Okay, so yeah, so guys, before we talk about sources of funds, what are funds? Like, what do you understand from the word fund? funds කියන්නේ මොනවද?
Cash, I think cash.
Yes. Cash or money.
A sum of money saved.
Yes, Taranga. Yes. Okay,
Saved
so
money.
yes. Say yes, the saved money or the money that you are getting from other people from outside. Okay, so funds means basically cash or money. Okay, or your finances. Okay, so funds means money. So sources of funds means sources of money. Sources through which you get your money. Okay, so yeah. So all businesses, like all the companies require funding for their activities. Okay, all businesses require money for their activities. Okay, so for example, maybe to purchase a new computer system, you will need to take a loan. Okay, and to pay your suppliers, you might need to um, get a bank overdraft. Okay, so likewise, so these are some examples. Okay, so you might need to get a loan to purchase a new computer system, or you might need to get a bank overdraft to pay your suppliers. Okay, so for different purposes, for these kind of purposes, you need funding. Okay, all businesses need funding for their activities. Okay, so just like people, okay, so keep organizations aside for a while. As people, we also need money for a range of purposes, right? So if you are doing a job for traveling, you need a certain amount of money. And if you are studying for the diplomas or the degrees or whatever the courses that you are following, you need to pay for those as well. Okay, so that for that you need to um, have money for that as well. Okay, so just like people, organizations need money for different purposes. Okay, people also need money for different purposes. So likewise, organizations also need money or funds for different purposes. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so there are some factors to consider when choosing funds. Okay, so when you are choosing a source, when you are choosing sources for funds, okay, so you can we just discussed that all the businesses require money or funding for their activities, right? So you can get these funds from different sources, right? You can you can get these from lenders. Lenders means the people who lend money. Okay, and you can get these from banks. Okay, so likewise, there are different sources of funds. Okay, so here, uh, these are the factors these are the factors that you have to consider when you are choosing a source of fund for your company. Okay, so ඔගොල්ලෝ මොකක් හරි there are different sources of funds නේ. එතකොට ඔගොල්ලෝ මොකක් හරි එක source එකක් තෝරගනිද්දි these are the factors that you need to consider. Okay, when selecting a source, these are the factors that we need to consider. Okay, so yeah, so the first thing is the source of fund should match to its specific use. Okay, so there are you can categorize sources of funds into two main groups as long-term sources of funds and short-term sources of funds. Right, the sources of funds make the sources categorize කරන්න පුළුවන් main groups dekakata as long-term sources of funds and short-term sources of funds. Okay, so long-term sources of funds should be used for long-term uses or needs. Right, the long-term sources use karanne for long-term uses or needs, for long-term needs of the company. Right, so that's why I said the source should match to its specific use. Okay, so long-term sources should be used for long-term needs, and short-term sources should be used for short-term needs. Okay, so that is one main factor that we need to consider. Okay, and the source itself will have a certain cost. Okay, so the cost of this source should also be considered, and the organization's objectives should definitely be considered, and the flexibility and the availability of the funds should also be considered. Okay, because there can be situations where you have to change your source. Okay, so there can be situations where you have to switch from one source to another source of fund. Okay, so there can be situations where we have to switch from one source to another source. Okay, so your sources should be flexible and available. Okay, so it should be your sources should allow you to switch from one source to another source when it is necessary. Okay, so the flexibility of sources should also be considered when choosing funds. Okay, and the organization's current financial structure should also be considered. Whether, like, are you generating enough income, are you generating enough profit, or are you experiencing a loss? Likewise, the current financial structure should also be considered. Okay, and the state of the external environment should also be considered. Okay, so for example, economy and the consumer trends. Okay, so the changes that happen in the external, in the outside environment should also be considered when choosing funds. Okay, and the type of business structure should also be considered. Okay, because, for example, a sole trader or partnership can raise funds from the stock market. Okay, so like, so if your business is a sole trader or is a partnership business, then you can raise some funds from the stock market as well. Okay, so the type of the business structure, the structure of your business should be also considered when choosing funds. Okay, so basically these are some factors that you need to consider when choosing funds. Okay, so we can categorize these sources of funds into two main groups as internal sources of funds and external sources of funds. Right, the sources of funds, අපිට funds හම්බෙන sources categorize කරන්න පුළුවන් into two main groups as internal sources of funds and external sources of funds. Okay, so let's see. So first of all, let's discuss about the internal sources of funds. Okay, so here are the internal sources of funds. Okay, so these are the internal sources of funds. Retained profit, the sales of assets, utilizing working capital more effectively, depreciation. Okay, so these are the internal source of funds. Okay, so internal sources කියන්නේ the sources that you have within the organization itself. කියන්නේ organization එක ඇතුලේ ඉඳන්ම company එක ඇතුලේ ඉඳන්ම company එකට fund කරන්නේ කොහොමද? Okay, so කියන්නේ මෙතන, for example, profit taking you can fund. Profit is some sort of a fund, right? You can use the profit to enhance your activities, to upgrade your company, right? So profit is an internal source. Profit එකක් කියන එක externally අපිට outside environment එකෙන් හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. Profit is something that you generate from the company itself. Right, so profit එක කියන එක company එකේම generate කරන එකක් නේ. So it is an internal sources of funds. Okay, so internal sources means the sources that you have within the company itself. Company එක ඇතුලේ තියෙනම company එක ඇතුලේම තියෙන sources වලට තමයි කියන්නේ internal sources. හරිද? අපි පිටින් ගන්න උදව් නෙමෙයි. company එක ඇතුලේම තියෙන sources වලට අපි කියනවා internal sources. Okay, so whatever the sources that you have inside the company itself are called internal sources of funds. Okay, so these are some examples for internal sources of funds. Okay, so we can discuss about all of them one by one. Okay, so first of all, let's discuss what is retained profit. Okay, so profit profit means the extra money that you generate, right? Like profit එකක් කියලා කියන ලාභයක්නේ, the extra money that you generate. So I mean, if your income is bigger, if your income is larger, and if your expenses are lesser, then that is a profit. That means you are uh, earning more money than you are spending. Okay, the amount that you are earning is bigger than the amount that you are spending. So that is a profit. Okay, so that is the meaning of the word profit. So what is retained profit? Like retained profit එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? As you think.
Profit which is kept inside the company.
Exactly, Rifka. That's a really good explanation. Yes, and Metni, that's a really good explanation as well. A sum of money saved or made available for a particular purpose. Yes. Okay, so those are some really good answers, guys. Thank you for answering that question. Yes, retained profit means the profit that is retained in the company, the profit that is saved in the company. Okay, so yeah, so retained profit represents the profits generated from sales after interest payments to lenders, taxes to the government, payments to shareholders in the form of dividends. Okay, so guys, once you get your income, after earning your income, like after earning your profit, හරිද ප්‍රොෆිට් එකක් කියන ලාභයක් ලැබුවට පස්සේ මේ ප්‍රොෆිට් එකෙන් අපිට කරන්න දේවල් ටිකක් තියෙනවානේ. There are certain things that we need to do from this profit, right? We need to, I mean, if we have taken a loan, අපි loan එකක් කරන්නම් තියෙන්නේ, we need to uh, do the interest payments to the lenders or to the banks, right? In banks වලට හරි lenders ලට හරි we need to make the interest payments. We need to make our interest payments, and we need to pay taxes to the government, and we need to pay some money to our shareholders. Okay, so likewise, we have these things to do. Okay, so once we earn a profit, we have after earning a profit, we need to spend some amount of that profit for these things, right? මේ දේවල් වලට අපිට profit එකෙන් යම් කිසි කොටසක් spend කරන්න වෙනවා. Okay, so ඒ කොටස spend කරාට පස්සේ ඉතුරු වෙන profit එකට තමයි කියන්නේ retained profit කියලා. Okay, so after earning this profit, after earning your profit, you need to spend a certain amount of your profit to settle these payments. Your taxes, your interest payments, payments for shareholders. Okay, so for these things, you need to allocate some amount of your profit to settle these payments. Okay, so once you settle these payments, the amount of profit remaining is called retained profit. ඒ කියන්නේ retain remain වෙන profit එකට තමයි කියන්නේ අපි retained profit කියලා. Okay, so that remaining profit is called retained profit. Okay, so this retained profit can be used for the business itself. ඒ කියන්නේ business එකේම company එකේම මොනවා හරි වැඩවලට we can use this retained profit. Okay, so we can use the retained profit to upgrade the company, like to maybe to buy supply, maybe to buy raw materials, and maybe to buy some new machines or to buy new equipment. Okay, so likewise, the remaining profit or the retained profit can be used back into the business activities. Business activities වලටම we can use this retained profit again. Okay, so retained profit can be invested in the business itself. Okay, so that is one internal source of fund. Okay, and the next thing is the sales of assets. Okay, so so you can understand this just by looking at the name itself. The sale of assets means selling your assets. Okay, so when we start a business, especially if you take large retail businesses, these large retail businesses own a lot of properties, right? So these businesses that own these businesses that have a lot of properties can sell some of these properties and earn money from selling these properties, right? So if you have any if you have a lot of, if you start a business and if this business has a lot of properties, you can sell some amount of you can sell some of these properties and get money from that. Okay, so this is called the sale of assets. Okay, so for example, supermarkets and banks. Supermarkets and banks are examples. Okay, so they are supermarkets and banks are some businesses that sell their own properties. Okay, so that's about the sale of assets. Okay, so the sale of assets have advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so the main advantage of selling your assets is this: having no associated borrowing costs or debts. Okay, so when you are selling assets, you are selling your own properties, right? ඔය අපිට අපේම තියෙන properties, කියන්නේ අපේම properties තමයි අපි sell කරන්නේ කාට හරි. Okay, so you like වෙන කාගේවත් ඒවා නෙමෙයිනේ, you are selling වෙන companies වලට වෙන businesses වලට අදාළ ඒවා නෙමෙයිනේ, you are selling your own assets, you are selling your own properties, right? So since you are selling your own properties, there is no borrowing cost and there are no debts. Okay, so debts කියන්නේ ණය. හරිද? borrowing cost කියන්නේ අපි මොකක්ද එකක් borrow කරද්දී අපිට pay කරන්න වෙන amount එක. Okay, so මේ දෙකම නැහැ sale of assets වලදී, because you are selling your own properties, you are selling your own assets, so there are no borrowing costs, so there are no debts. That is a huge advantage of this. Okay, and the disadvantage is that so selling your assets can be a little bit tricky or risky sometimes, right? Because once you sell an asset, once you sell a property, that is gone forever, right? You can't take it back. Okay, so once you sell properties, once you sell a certain property, that property is gone forever. We can't take it back. Okay, so we need to be extra careful when selling these assets or properties. Okay,
And
because
also the legal cost also very high, no, miss, when we are doing.
yes, Taranga, yes, the legal cost also, because yes, you might, for the legal matters, like when we are selling a cost, yes, we need to hire a lawyer to like to handle the legal side of the process, and that will also cost you a lot. Yes, that is a good point. And the and we need like the person that we are selling our property to is also like it's also risky. Like, I mean, we should know to whom you are selling your property, right? When we are selling an asset, when we are selling a property, you should also know to whom you are selling the property. The person who, like, we need to properly understand the nature of the person who buys the property or the asset. Okay, so those are some risks associated with um, selling assets or properties. Okay, so you should be very careful. Okay, because once you sell a certain property, you can't take it back. It's gone forever. You can't do any changes to it thereafter. Okay, so you have to be very careful with that. Okay, so that's about the sale of assets. Okay, and the next internal source is utilizing working capital more effectively. Okay, so the third point over here, utilizing working capital more effectively. Okay, so working capital. What is working capital? Okay, so working capital is money tied up in the business and used to finance its day-to-day needs, such as buying raw materials. Okay, so working capital means basically the capital or the money that you need for your day-to-day work happening in the company. Okay, so whatever the amount of money that you need to finance the day-to-day needs of your company are called working capital. Like company ka day-to-day company ka day-to-day needs fulfill කරන්න අවශ්‍ය මුදල් ප්‍රමාණය තමයි අපි කියන්නේ working capital කියලා. Okay, the amount of money that you need to finance the company's day-to-day needs is called the working capital. Okay, the amount of money that you need to carry out day-to-day tasks of the company. Okay, so yeah, so every business has its own working capital cycle, right? So there are certain things that we can do to use this working capital more effectively. Like there are certain strategies that you can follow to use this working capital more effectively. Okay, so here we can look at some of these strategies. Okay, so what are the strategies that you can follow to use the working capital effectively? Okay, so yeah, so before we learn about the strategies, let me show you a little bit of a case study, a manufacturing case study. Okay, so this case study shows you how working capital is generated in a manufacturing business, right? How working capital is how working capital is created in manufacturing businesses. Okay, so so in the previous slide we learned that there is a working capital cycle, right? Okay, so this working capital cycle shows you how money moves around the business, how the money that you earn moves around the business. Okay, so let's see how this working capital cycle works in manufacturing businesses. Okay, so this is how the working capital cycle happens in manufacturing businesses. Okay, so the first part of the cycle starts with cash being spent on raw materials. Okay, so for manufacturing, obviously you need raw materials. Okay, so in the first part of the cycle starts with cash being spent on raw materials. Okay, so to purchase raw materials, you need to spend money, right? So this is the first part of the cycle, spending money to buy raw materials. Okay, and then these raw materials become your stock. Okay, so once you pay money for your raw materials and you buy these raw materials, and you will in your storerooms you will stock up these raw materials. These raw materials will be stored in your storerooms, right? So these materials become your stock. Okay, so now cash is tied up as unsold stock items. Okay, so cash is now tied up as unsold stock items. So why do we call them unsold stock items? Because we haven't made the finished item yet, right? I mean, for example, if you take a biscuit manufacturing company, once you buy all the raw materials, you store them in the storerooms, but you haven't made the biscuit yet, right? So you are still in the initial parts of the cycle. හරිද? ඔයාගේ finished product එක අපි තාම අපේ finished product එක අපි තාම හදලා නැහැ. The finished item is not prepared yet. Okay, so this is why these raw materials are called unsold stock items, because these raw materials have not been converted into finished products yet. These are just raw materials. They are not converted to products yet. Okay, so they are not sold yet. Okay, so we call them unsold stock items. Okay, and these stock items or these raw materials have a certain amount of price. Okay, so like each and every raw material has a certain amount of cost or a price attached to them. So they can be considered as cash which is tied up. හරි, ඒ කියන්නේ මේ එකතු කරලා තියෙන raw materials එකතු වෙච්ච cash එකක් විදිහට අපිට consider කරන්නත් පුළුවන් because each and every raw material has a certain price attached to them, right? So එතකොට අපි if you look at the raw materials අර financial perspective එකකින් අපි raw materials තියා බැලුවොත් this is actually cash tied up, right? Because each and every raw material has a specific price, has a specific cost. Okay, so these raw materials that we have stocked up can be considered as cash tied up. Okay, so that's it about the first part of the cycle. Okay, and then this manufacturing company will manufacture their products. Okay, so these products will be sold to customers. Okay, and then the customers will pay money and buy these products. Okay, so the company will receive money from the customers. Okay, and this money that the company receives from customers can be used to buy new stock of raw materials. කියන්නේ මේ හම්බෙන money company එකට use කරන්න පුළුවන් ඊළඟ stock එක purchase කරන්න. Okay, so whatever the money that the company is getting from the customers can be used to purchase the next stock of raw materials. Okay, so this is how working capital cycle works. Okay, so if the business is making a profit, some amount of this profit can be kept as retained profit as well. Okay, so if the company is making a profit, you will need some amount of this profit to settle your bills, but after settling all those bills, the remaining profit or the retained profit can be saved for later use. Okay, so without spending the retained profit immediately in a short term, you can save it for a long-term purpose. Okay, so this is how the working capital cycle happens in a manufacturing business. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so here I told you that there are some strategies to use or utilize utilizing means using. Okay, so I told you that there are several strategies that you can follow to use working capital more effectively. Okay, so now we are going to look at those strategies. Okay, so this is one strategy. This is one such strategy that you can follow to use your working capital effectively. Okay, so this is strategy number 1, reducing our working capital needs. Okay, so you can reduce your working capital needs. So this will help you to handle your working capital more effectively. Okay, so how can you reduce your working capital needs? Okay, so for example, if we minimize our stock levels, we reduce the amount of money tied up in stock. Okay, so this is an example of how you can reduce your working capital needs. Okay, so if you minimize your stock levels, okay, so if you minimize your stock levels, you reduce the amount of money tied up in stock. Okay, so for example, like when we order stock materials, right? අපි ඒ කියන්නේ කිසිම plan එකක් නැතුව when we are purchasing raw materials, අපි කිසිම plan එකක් නැතුව, like if we kept ordering raw materials without a proper plan, then raw materials නිකං stock up වෙනවනේ in our storerooms, like අපේ inventory එකේ raw materials නිකං කිසි purpose එකක් නැතුව like uselessly නිකං බොරුවට stock up වෙනවා. Right? And may stock up වෙන raw materials සේරම සල්ලිනේ, because you need to pay for your raw materials, right? So එතකොට මේ නිකරුණේ uselessly stock up වෙන සේරම raw materials, at the end of the day it's a huge lot of money, right? So if you can minimize your stock levels, they can නිකරුණේ raw materials purchase කරන්න නැතුව හරි plan එකකට විතරක් අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රමාණයට විතරක් raw materials purchase කරොත්, like if you purchase only the needed amount of raw materials according to a proper plan, then those materials will not stock up unnecessarily in your inventory, right? ඒක නිකං unnecessarily stock up වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක prevent වෙනවා if we had a proper plan.
After we should plan, I think ma'am, we should plan after investigation in requirement of market position.
Exactly, Janaka. Yes, we can investigate it according to the demand, right? So if especially in a manufacturing company, like let's say let's say this manufacturing company manufactures biscuits and cakes. So if you like you said, you can investigate your market, and like after you investigate the market, if you realize that your cakes have a lesser demand than biscuits, then cakes වලට අවශ්‍ය raw material ඔයාට අඩුවෙන් order කරන්න පුළුවන්. biscuits වලට අවශ්‍ය raw material prioritize කරලා. Okay, so likewise
And also we can give the discount, no?
discount to whom, Taranga? To customers, you mean?
If we
Yeah,
want
client.
to increase our sale.
Yes, to increase, yes. If you want to increase your sales, yes, you can provide discounts to your customers. Okay, because like given the discounts, the customers will be encouraged to buy more. Okay, and then when they buy more, you will gain more income. Okay, so yeah, so this is this is the meaning behind minimizing stock levels. Okay, so minimizing stock levels කියන්නේ අපි raw materials ගන්න නැතුව ඉන්න එක නෙමෙයි. It doesn't mean that we are not buying raw materials. So minimizing means buying only the amount that you need. Okay, so then the raw materials will not be unnecessarily stocked up in the inventory. So the නිකං stock up වෙන්නේ if we had a proper plan. Okay, it saves you money as well. Okay, so this is how you can reduce your working. This is how you can reduce your working capital needs. Okay, and this is another strategy to reduce your working capital needs. Just in time production. Okay, so JIT. Okay, so this is another strategy that you can follow to utilize your working capital effectively. Okay, so just in time production means the manufacturer will start manufacturing the product only after a customer orders it. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ කලින් manufacture කරලා තියාගන්නේ customer ගෙන් order එක ආවම තමයි manufacture කරන්න පටන් ගන්නෙ. Okay, so the manufacturer will start manufacturing his or her product only after receiving a request from the customer, only after receiving an order from the customer. Okay, so for example, when a customer orders a bed or a dining table, they may, in some cases, have to wait for 2 to 4 weeks for delivery. Okay, this is because, so why do they have to wait for 2 to 4 weeks? Because the manufacturer is starting the manufacturing process only after receiving the order. Okay, හදලා තියාගෙන ඉන්න, හදන්න පටන් ගන්න order එක ආවට පස්සේ. They will start making it only after the order receives, only after they get an order from a customer. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so so what is the advantage of this? Like what, as you guys think, like as you guys can understand, what are the advantages of this method? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ order එකක් ආවහම විතරක් order එකක් ආවහම විතරක් manufacture කරන්න පටන් ගන්න එකේ what can be the advantages?
We can decide at a cost, and we can decide at reasonable price for that.
Okay, that's a good answer, Janaka. Yes, you can decide the cost, and the main advantage.
We can reduce the overproduction.
Exactly, that's a really good answer. Yes, you can reduce the overproduction. That's a very good answer.
Ma'am, we can minimizing capital.
Yes, you can minimize the working capital as well. Okay, so thank you for those answers, guys. Those are some really good answers. Okay, so yes, so like you guys said, just in time production valadi, you are producing the product only after receiving an order, right? So order එකක් ආවේ නැත්නම් you are not producing, you are not manufacturing. Order එකක් ආවොත් විතරයි order එකක් දැම්මට පස්සේ තමයි you start manufacturing. Okay, so yeah, so the main advantage of this method is that you do not need to stock up your raw materials, right? So here you are starting the manufacturing process only after receiving an order. Okay, so that means you do not need to stock up your raw materials. You don't have to spend money and stock up your raw materials. You can buy your raw materials only after receiving an order. Okay, so there is no need to stock up your raw materials. Okay, so that is a huge advantage of this just-in-time production method.
So the inventory cost can be reduced, no ma'am?
Yes, Rifka, exactly. The inventory costs can be reduced. Okay, especially like, I mean, since there is no need to stock up your raw materials, the inventory costs can also be reduced. Okay, so those are some main advantages of just-in-time production. Okay, and this is another strategy that you can follow to reduce your working capital needs. Okay, so you can provide early payment incentives to your customers. Okay, so that means the company can ask its customers to purchase things on credit. Okay, so you can allow your customers to purchase things on credit by using credit cards. Okay, so and you can provide some discounts for credit cards. For using a credit card, you can provide a certain discount to your customers. Okay, so this will encourage the customers to spend more of their money on your products. So then you can gain more income. Okay, so that is another method of reducing working capital needs. Okay, and this is another strategy that you can follow to reduce your working capital needs. Delaying payments to creditors. Okay, so මේකත් working capital needs reduce කරන්න පුළුවන් තව strategy එකක්. Delaying payments to creditors. Okay, so in here, what we do is we delay or we slow down our payments to our suppliers or creditors. Okay, so like we tell our suppliers or creditors to wait a little bit for the payment. So we can delay, like we can't delay without communicating to them. Like ඒගොල්ලන්ට නොකිය delay කරන්න බෑ, that will lead to a legal case. You can have a conversation with your suppliers and creditors, and you can come to a mutual agreement and follow this strategy. Okay, so once both the parties come to a mutual agreement, we can delay the payments to suppliers or creditors. Like we can slow down the payment to our suppliers or creditors. We can ask them to give us some time to settle the payments. Okay, so yeah, so then a business can use its resources for longer without having paid for them. Okay, so this allows this strategy allows a business to use their resources for a longer period of time without paying for them. Okay, so yeah, so that's about that. Okay, and MRP and MRP2. Okay, so this is another strategy that we can follow to reduce our working capital needs. Okay, so MRP means material resource planning and MRP2 means manufacturing resource planning. Okay, so MRP කියන එක අපිට දෙවිදියකට MRP කියන short form එක we can expand this short form in two different ways. Okay, so MRP can refer to material resource planning or manufacturing resource planning. Okay, so when you have better material resource planning and better manufacturing resource planning, then you can order stock materials more efficiently. They can material resource planning and manufacturing resource planning කියන එක හොඳ වුණාම when you have better MRP, you can order your stock materials more efficiently. Okay, so you can order the amounts that you like you can order the amounts which are needed. You don't have to order your stock materials unnecessarily. You can order the amounts which are actually needed for the production. Okay, so yeah, so better MRP practices is another strategy that you can follow to reduce your working capital needs. Okay, so these systems, these material resource, better material resource planning and better manufacturing resource planning reduce the time that stock is left unused because you are ordering the amount because you are ordering only the amount that you need. Okay, so therefore reduce the amount of money tied up in stock. Okay, so there is no stock being left in the inventory unnecessarily because you are ordering only the amount that you need. Okay, so there is no extra amount left in the inventory. So there is no waste of money. Okay, so these are some strategies that you can follow to reduce your working capital needs. Okay, so here are the advantages of reducing working capital needs. Okay, so when you reduce your working capital needs, you do not have to take any loans from banks or your banks or lenders, or you don't have to take any money from your shareholders. Okay, so that is a huge advantage. Okay, so when a business can manage their own working capital, there is no need for them to take loans from banks or take money from shareholders. That is not necessary. That is not needed. Okay, so that is a huge advantage. You don't have to ask a bank or your shareholders to give you more money. Okay, and what are the disadvantages of reducing working capital needs? Okay, so the disadvantage is that sometimes your suppliers will not be happy waiting for money. Okay, because here when we were talking about the strategies, I told you about this strategy delaying payments to creditors, right? So here I told you that we slow down our payments to suppliers. We are basically asking them to wait. We are asking them to give us more money. We are asking them to give us more time for us to settle the payments. Okay, so we are asking them to wait a little bit, give us a little bit of time to settle the payments. Okay, so this might make your suppliers kind of unhappy, right? So your suppliers might be unhappy, like your suppliers might not agree to wait like this. Okay, so they will not be happy waiting for money. Okay, so that is a disadvantage because especially like all the fields are competitive, right? So for example, අපි manufacturing field එක ගත්තොත්, let's take manufacturing field for an example. So how many manufacturers do we have in Sri Lanka, right? I mean manufacturing field එකේ කොයිතරම්නම් manufacturing companies තියෙනවද, right? There are like නිකන් 7-8ක් නෙමෙයිනේ companies තියෙන්නේ. There are so many manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka, right? So there is the competition is high. Okay, so the a company එකක් supplier ගෙන් pay කරන්න කාලේ ඉල්ලනවා. තව company එකක් එහෙම කාලයක් ඉල්ලන්නේ නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේ වෙලාවෙම pay කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට which company the supplier will choose? The company that can pay immediately, right? So supplier will always choose the company that is advantageous for them, the company that is beneficial for them. Okay, so due to the high competition that we have in each and every field, the suppliers will choose companies will choose companies that do not ask them to wait for money. Okay, so yeah, so if you ask your suppliers to wait for money, then there is a possibility that you will end up losing your suppliers as well. The suppliers might leave the company. Okay, so that is a disadvantage. Okay, so you need to have so if you think you need more time to settle the payments to your suppliers, then you should have really good communication skills to talk to your suppliers and come to an agreement. Okay, so in such cases, you should have really good communication skills to negotiate with them. Yes, so that is one thing. And this is the so far we discussed about 3 types of internal sources, right? The retained profit, the sales of assets, utilizing working capital more effectively. We discussed about these 3. So now we are going to talk about the last internal source over here, depreciation. So let's see what is depreciation. Okay, so depreciation means the reduction in value of our assets. Okay, so the value of a certain thing will decrease with time, right? So this is called depreciation. Okay, so for example, if you buy a machine, so let's say you buy a machine to your company, you buy a machine to your company, and let's say the cost of this machine was 10 lakhs. Let's say you are buying a machine for 10 lakhs of rupees. Okay, so maybe after 5 years, let's say after 5 years, this machine is not that efficient, right? I mean, like the efficiency decreases over time. Okay, the efficiency of machines and equipment decreases over time. So let's say මේ machine එකේ efficiency දැන් ඉස්සර තරම්ම නැහැ, ගත්ත අලුත තරම්ම නැහැ. So you are deciding to sell this and buy a new machine. කියලා හිතමුකෝ. එතකොට will you be able to, so you bought this machine 5 years back by spending 10 lakhs. Okay, so now you are selling this machine. Can you sell it for 10 lakhs? No, right? You can't sell it for 10 lakhs because now it is a used item. Okay, and it has been used for 5 years. The machine is worn out now. So you can't sell it for 10 lakhs. Maybe you will be able to, for example, maybe you will be able to sell it for 6 lakhs or 650. Okay, so definitely you will not be able to sell it for the price for which that you bought the machine. The price you can't sell it. You can't sell it for 10 lakhs. Okay, so you will have to you will definitely have to sell it for a price lesser than 10 lakhs. Okay, so this is called depreciation. Okay, so the fall of value over time is called depreciation. Okay, so to calculate the level of depreciation, we have 2 methods called the straight line method and reducing balance method. Okay, so we are not going to discuss about these methods because like these 2 methods are more into economy and stuff. So we are not going to discuss in detail, but just for your knowledge, to calculate depreciation, there are 2 methods, the straight line method and reducing balance method. Okay, so now, so I just now mentioned that depreciation is the fall of value, the fall in value over time. Okay, so depreciation tells you how the value of a certain thing falls over time. Okay, so how is this considered as a source of income? Like, sorry, a source of fund. Like, how is depreciation considered as a source of finance or as a source of fund? So what is the reason? Why is depreciation considered as a source of fund? Okay, so depreciation is considered as a source of fund for two main reasons. Okay, because when a property, when an asset loses its value, yes, you can't sell it for the original price. එක කියන්නේ අපි ගත්ත price එකට අපිට sell කරන්න බෑ. ඒක ඇත්ත, but still you can sell it for some amount of money, right? ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි price එකකට sell කරන්න පුළුවන්. You can sell it for a certain amount. Okay, so yes, I mean, if you take the previous example that I gave you, the machine 10 lakhs example, you bought it for 10 lakhs. Yes, after 5 years, yes, you cannot sell it for 10 lakhs, but still you can sell it maybe for 6 or 7 lakhs. Okay, so that amount of money that you get from selling the asset can be uh, taken back to the business as a source of fund. Okay, so that amount that you get from selling the machine can be used to fund whatever the activity is happening in the business. Okay, so that amount of money that you get from selling can be used as a fund. Okay, so this is why depreciation is, this is one reason why depreciation is considered as a source of fund. Okay, because yes, the value decreases over time, but still you can sell your assets and gain some sort of money from that. Okay, so this is one reason why depreciation is considered as a source of fund. Okay, and there is another reason. Okay, so in many countries, depreciation is a major tax deduction. Okay, so depreciation is like, in many countries, depreciation is used to deduct your taxes. Okay, because depreciation is recognized as an expense, okay, which we can claim to reduce our taxable income. Okay, so taxable income means the amount of your income that is taxed by the government. The income එකෙන් tax වෙන ප්‍රමාණයට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ taxable income කියලා. Okay, so depreciation can be used to reduce your taxable income. Okay, because in many countries, depreciation is considered as an expense. Okay, so you can claim it to reduce your taxable income. Okay, so these are the two main reasons why depreciation is considered as a source of fund. Okay, so guys, that's all about the internal sources. So do you all have any questions so far?
Sorry, no ma'am. All are clear.
All right, so can I hear from the others as well? Is everything clear up to now?
Yes, ma'am. All are clear.
All right. Okay, then. So then we can move on to external sources of funds. Okay, so external sources of funds means the sources which are located outside the business. Okay, so external sources of funds means the sources which are located outside the business through which you can get funds. කියන්නේ business environment එකෙන් පිට තියෙන environment එකේ තියෙන sources වලට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ external sources. Okay, so for example, banks. Okay, so banks are located outside your business environment, right? So whatever the sources which are located outside the company are called external sources. Okay, so the sources which are located in the external environment, in the outside environment. Okay, so here external sources of funds can be further categorized into two main groups. The external sources of funds උත් අපිට external sources we can categorize into two groups as long-term sources and short-term sources. Okay, so the sources of funds can be categorized into two main groups, internal and external. And the external sources, you can categorize them again into two main groups as long-term sources and short-term sources. Okay, so first of all, let's discuss about the long-term external sources of funds. Okay, so these are the long-term external sources. Share capital, loan capital, venture capitalists, grants from governments and other philanthropic organizations. Okay, so these are some examples for external sources long term. Okay, so let's discuss about the first one over here, share capital. Okay, so share capital means basically the money that is put into a company by investors. Okay, so share capital represents the monies that are put into a company by investors who are then classified as shareholders. Okay, so when you start up a company, or when you start a business, the investors will because like when you start a company or when you start a business, you have not generated an income yet, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි පටන් ගත්ත ගමන් income එකක් generate කරලා නැහැනේ. Right? We will have to wait for a month or two to generate an income or even more. Okay, so like when we start a company, when we start a business, we haven't generated an income yet. Okay, so there should be an initial amount of money to handle the things. Okay, so this money is given by the investors. Okay, so this money is called share capital. Okay, so share capital means the money, the amount of money that is put into the company by investors when you are starting a new company or a new business. Okay, so when you are starting a new company or a new business, whatever the amount of money that is put into the company by investors is called share capital. Okay, so for sole traders and partnerships, this is not considered. Share capital is not considered as a source of fund for sole traders and partnerships because they do not have shareholders. Okay, so sole traders and partnerships sole traders and partnerships businesses like sole traders and partnership companies, they do not have shareholders. Okay, so this share capital is not a relevant source of fund for these organizations. Okay, so for sole traders and partnerships, share capital is not a source of fund. It's not a relevant source of fund because they do not have shareholders. Okay, so now you know what the share capital is. Okay, so I told you that share capital is the money that is put into the company by the investors when you firstly start a new company or a new business, right? So this amount of money, so whatever the money that you are getting from your investors, this money can be used to purchase the organization's initial assets. Okay, so if you have any if you need any machines, if you need any equipment, if you need computers, okay, and if you need like basic like office furniture like tables, chairs and all of that, and then like ACs. Okay, so likewise this money that you get from your investors, this share capital can be used to purchase your initial assets, to purchase your initial properties. Okay, so that is how the share capital can be used to purchase your initial assets. Okay, so share capital is a long-term source of finance. Okay, so this is a long-term source of fund. So this should be share capital is a long-term source of fund. So it should be used only for long-term needs, such as purchasing machines or computer systems, as I just mentioned. Okay, so share capital kiyanne, it is a long-term source of fund. Okay, so it should be used only for long-term needs. It should not be used for short-term needs. Okay, so yeah, so here are some advantages of share capital. Okay, so the main advantage of share capital is that there are no interest payments. Okay, so share capital means the amount of money that you are getting from your investors, right? So investors la interest එකකට debt එකක් විදිහට නෙමෙයිනේ දෙන්නේ. So there are no interest payments. There is no interest payment for share capital. That is a really big advantage. Okay, and also if your shareholders decided to increase their investment, then you end up receiving more money, right? When your shareholders increase their investment, they start investing more. So investing more means as a company, you are gaining more money. Okay, so those are some advantages of share capital. Okay, and so we just discussed about share capital, and now we can move on to the next external source, long-term external source, loan capital. Okay, so loan capital. Okay, so what is debt or loan capital? Okay, so sometimes when we run a company or when we are doing a business, funding is provided by outside banks or lenders. Okay, so there will be money provided by outside banks or lenders. Okay, so this money is called debt or loan capital. So whatever the money that you receive from outside banks and lenders are called, whatever the money that you receive from outside banks and lenders is called debt or loan capital. Okay, so this money has a, like this money is provided for a fixed period of time with repayments evenly spread out over the length of the loan. Okay, so when a bank is giving you a loan, this is provided for a fixed period of time, maybe for 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years. Likewise, when we are taking a loan, there is always a fixed period of time because the bank is giving it only for a fixed period of time. Okay, and you can repay it, like there will be repayments evenly spread out over the length of the loan. Okay, so like you can, that means you can repay it in installments, right? They can ekapara mulu payment ekama karanne නැතුව you can repay the loan, like the loan will be broken into smaller chunks and you can repay little by little. Okay, so for example, monthly this much, or else once in 3 months this much, once in 4 months this much, yearly this much. Okay, so likewise you can pay monthly or once in 3 months or once in 4 months or yearly or else twice a year. Okay, so likewise you can repay little by little, okay, without having to repay the whole amount at once. It will be more flexible, like you can repay the amount little by little. Okay, and when you pay interest, there can be some interest rate holidays as well. Okay, so when you take a loan, for share capital, we don't have any interest. We discussed that in an earlier slide. But when we are taking a loan, the interest is always there. You need to pay the interest as well. Okay, so when we are paying the interest, there can be some interest rate holidays as well. Okay, so interest rate holidays means where the lender agrees not to take interest for a short period of time. Okay, so lender means whoever lender කියන්නේ whoever the person who gave you the loan. They can loans you can take from banks, and there are like you can take loans from people as well. Okay, so if you take it from a person, then that person is called a lender. Okay, so there can be certain durations where the lender agrees not to take interest for a short period of time. Okay, so there can be situations, there can be instances where your lender agrees to not take interest from you for a short period of time. ඒ කියන්නේ පොඩි කාල සීමාවකට එයා interest එක ගන්නෙ නැහැ ඔයාගෙන්. Okay, so those kind of periods, those kind of durations are called interest rate holidays. Okay, so interest rate holidays are the short periods of time where your lender doesn't take any interest from you. Okay, so yeah, so if your business is struggling to find the debt, like if your business is financially struggling, you can talk with your lender to check if you can get any interest rate holidays. Okay, and yeah, and loan capital is provided for more than 1 year, and so is a long-term form of fund. Okay, so loan capitals are always provided for more than 1 year. Okay, so that is why we consider this as a long-term external source. Okay, because loan capital is provided for more than 1 year. Okay, so more than 1 year means long term, right? So this is the reason why we consider debt and loan capital as a long-term external source. Okay, so here are some advantages of loan capital. Okay, so yeah, so you can use your loan capital by taking loans. So whatever the money that you get as a loan can be used to buy the necessary things. For example, like machines or properties. Okay, so the loan can be used to buy these things for your company. Okay, and the payment is spread out over the useful revenue earning life of the asset. Okay, so that means there is no need to pay the entire amount at once. You don't have to pay the entire amount at once. You can pay it little by little. The payment is spread out evenly. Okay, so you can pay little by little. And if the loan has a fixed interest rate and the interest rates rise in the future, the loan could be a very smart investment. Okay, so so whatever the loan that you take has a fixed interest rate, right? So let's say you took a loan let's say you took a loan for 6% interest rate. හරිද? අපි හිතමුකෝ මේ 6% interest rate එක වැඩි වුණා කියලා ඉදිරි කාලෙදී අපි හිතමුකෝ with time this 6% rate increased up to 12%. But then you don't have to worry about that 12% because you took your loan for a 6% rate, right? So then you don't have to worry about this increase because that doesn't affect you. Okay, so whatever the interest rate that was there when you took the loan, that is the interest rate which is valid for you. Okay, so whatever the changes that happen afterwards, you don't have to bother about those changes. හරි, දෙකින් interest rate ඔයා loan එක ගන්න වෙලාවෙ නැතුව ඊට පස්සේ interest rate එකට වෙන changes ඔයාට බලපාන්නේ නැහැ. So whatever the changes that happen to the interest rate after taking the loan is not going to bother you. You don't have to bother about the changes that are happening afterwards. Okay, so if the loan has a fixed interest rate, even if the interest rates increased in the future, these increases are not applicable for you. Okay, so that's it. So then the loan could be a very smart investment because you were able to get the loan when the interest rates were lower, right? So that is a very smart investment. Okay, so these are some advantages of loan capital. Okay, so guys, can I know, do you all have any questions or doubts from the stuff that we discussed so far? Or is everything clear to you guys?
It's clear, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So can I hear from the others as well?
Clear, ma'am.
All right. Um, okay, so guys, then we can wrap up the lecture for today. Okay, so there are few slides that we couldn't discuss, like yeah, we are in slide 26, right? So there are 10 more slides. So these remaining slides we will discuss in the next week's lecture. Okay, so for now, for today's lecture, we can wrap up from here. Okay, so I will upload this onto the class notebook as well later. Okay, so guys, that's it for today's lecture. Thank you all for joining and have a nice day. I will see you guys again next week.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day.
No worries, Chanaka. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
No worries, Pubudu.
Thank you, ma'am.
No worries, Mithni. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day.
No worries, guys.